I can't say don't get vaccinated, because if you're comfortable, then go, get vaccinated. Do it for you and your children. Do it for your peace of mind, but don't do it because they're bullying you. Do not do it.
Excuse me, that was coarse. I got the coarse virus.
Our house were big Cinnamon Toast Crunch fans, and then Gabrielle only got the organic one. And sure enough, and my husband, there it was, and I couldn't believe it.
When I first heard of that, I was at the grocery store. I didn't run there, but next time I was there, I grabbed a box of that Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and I looked at it. I was, sure enough, trisodium phosphate, and I said, "What in the cinnamon toast is going on here?"
What do you got for me, Boomer Bob?
Well, I'll tell you what I've got for you there. Hey, Boomer Bob here, doing a Boomer Bob show, a show for boomers by boomers. First, we're going to touch on the kind of an update on the coronavirus. It's been a week since our last episode, and the current numbers, based on Johns Hopkins University statistics, we have confirmed 92,818 cases, 3,159 deaths, and 48,201 people have recovered, or over half have recovered. USA, it's 118 confirmed cases and 7 deaths. Now, this is at the time of recording, so those numbers, of course, are going to change. The economy really started to tank. Yesterday, it did a rally of almost 1,300 points, and then today it's back down roughly 480 to 500 points. I didn't get the final numbers, but so the economic impact is real. Whether or not it has anything to do with the actual coronavirus or people just playing with it because it's that time. It's an opportunistic time for them to mess with it. That's another podcast.
Yeah.
Trump came out yesterday, I think, and said that he was meeting with the big brains in pharmaceutical industry from, I guess, SmithKline or GlaxoSmithKline, whatever it is, and Johnson & Johnson, the assholes who gave all of our moms cervical cancer.
Yeah, through Johnson baby powder.
I'm surprised he didn't go ahead and throw Bluebell ice cream in there too. Those who give you listeria, kill people, and get to continue producing their product.
Yeah, Bayer and Monsanto probably.
Yeah, he said that he was going to meet with them to come up with a vaccine, which experts say you're going to take like 2 years to produce. So what's the freaking point? But yeah. Okay, I guess get on it now. Wouldn't you think that when they were creating this virus that they would have, I don't know, worked on an antidote or a vaccine while they were doing it? Wouldn't that be the smart way to do it?
Well, I think they should have tested their test kits a little bit better because they haven't had the greatest positive results with what they're testing people with. This kit
really,
so it
doesn't come back like it's giving false positives and false negatives, I guess.
Yeah, so they're all over the board with what the test kits are doing, and of course they don't have enough of them. So now they're gonna, I guess, go into overdrive producing the kits so they can test. They're talking about upwards of 1,000 people a day, which I don't know if that's within California on a United States scale. I really don't know. But, yeah, they quite haven't perfected that test kit. So you would have thought they would have got that right first. But they got Mike Pence on a job. He's the coronavirus czar, I guess.
Boy, did I feel I slept better that night when I got that news.
Yeah, I saw something on Drudge Report that said, does Mike Pence have the virus? I don't know.
Right.
They speculate, does the Pope have the virus? I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, I had
we
heard
can have
that
the virus right now, just sitting here talking to each other, feel fine. So
yeah,
we don't know.
Get podcast away. So Trump's gonna, I guess, create the first vaccine somehow, have his hand in it, kind of like Space Force. So vaccines. If a corona vaccine was offered right now, would you take it?
No, I'd want conclusive evidence and long-term studies and
exactly. It needs to be out longer than a couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, just because they come up with something and say we're here to save you, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good thing. I mean, it may save you from that and long-term cause something even worse. So they peddle the fear, and it's through propaganda. They know how to ignite society to push behind, whether it's a war or a vaccine or whatever it is they want to push an agenda of. They're very effective at it, and it usually begins with creating this a fear factor. So
some sort of well, I mean, wasn't it Rahm Emanuel?
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Exactly. I don't think that's what he meant, but
yeah,
maybe it is. Well, let's go ahead and preface that we are not medical professionals by any stretch of the word. We are just interested parties who like to develop our own opinions after our own research, our own level of research. His is much higher than mine. and I just develop opinions with very little evidence. So take the information in this for what it's worth. This is just a podcast.
I've studied it pretty extensively, and I've earned my PhD in bullshit. So,
Pilot higher and deeper.
yeah, I mean,
Let's just get the basics out of the way. What is a vaccine?
a vaccine is supposedly a variation of whatever illness they're trying to prevent.
And
So-
it's done through, they introduce it into your body and so that your immune system goes ahead and mutates it somehow, whatever.
yeah, at a very young age.
Yeah, and that way, if you're ever exposed to the actual virus and it gets into your bloodstream, it can kick its ass.
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah.
And they started out extremely young. I don't know if they do it at birth, but it's within 6 months of birth. They begin these series of shots. And back in early 80s, when me and you probably had our shots, we were getting about 20 shots. And now, because of the CDC...
I got 5.
Well, okay. I may have gotten less than 20.
Here's a list. At 2 months, you get DTP, polio, HIB. Later, you come back. Now, that's 5 shots at once. Oh, well, technically 4. One of them is a kind of a group shot. Then you got the, what is it?
Rotavirus? Yeah.
Rotavirus. And then you've got PCV, which is pneumococcal, you need pneumococcalpneumonia, whatever, pneumococcal, yeah.
Bob, I didn't know you were African.
Yeah, and then, just from the waist down, then you got meningitis B. So at 2 months old, you're given DTP, P, HIB, Hep B, Roto, PCV, and meningitis B. Then at 3 months, you get most of those all over again. The only one that they leave out is the PCV, which is pneumococcal, and meningitis. But you get those when you're 4 months. They just skip the Roto when you're 4 months, and you're getting all those again. When you're a year, you get meningitis C and HIB, pneumococcal, meningitis B, and MMR at 1 year old. 3 years old, you get the DTP again. You get the polio, MMR. By the time you're 3 years old, you're already hitting about 30 inoculations.
I think it's recommended you 72 currently overall from the CDC.
And the time frame, if you get them when you're 2 months old, you've got to go back for that 3rd month, for that 3 month next round. Otherwise, you just almost negate the powers of the first round.
Yeah.
So,
and another issue is effectively in the last, I guess, 5 years, the U.S. government has been on a relentless campaign in marriage with states that children, if you want to go to public schools, you're obligated, required to have these shots. And that's usually been the case, but they're slowly whittling away at any type of opt-out options. So if you were, for religious reasons, opposed to getting any type of vaccinations, you used to be able to do that. And you still can in some states, but they're pushing really hard to eliminate any reason and any excuse not to get your vaccinations. And you gotta wonder why that is. If there's a push to get everybody inoculated, is there something behind that? Not to mention that you got 300 million people in the country, and you have, I don't know what the birth rate is in America, but that's a lot of vaccinations, and I'm sure somebody's making a lot of money off that. Some Merck or pharmaceutical company that's producing them.
yeah,
So,
it's hard. I have no idea what vaccinations cost. I've never had to pay for them for my daughter or obviously for myself. I've just always covered, I guess, by insurance. Never got a bill for them. So I don't know what kind of money there is to be made on this, but of course, when you're talking about inoculating an entire population of a country or the world, the industrialized world, no less, which is probably 5 to 6 billion people, no, that's a lot of product. So those profits via volume, I guess.
the money involved in that, and the government's going to pony up the bill for whatever manufacturer.
Yeah,
makes
but that's
that
our
bullet.
money.
Yeah, but they're allocating a budget for that, and that's at our taxpayers' expense. So if you look at it from that perspective, 7 billion people, give or take, in the world, that's a lot of freaking bullets.
Yeah.
So you can apply that same mechanism times 72.
Yeah, shots.
Vaccination.
Right,
So
right.
somebody's making a lot of freaking money. A lot of the people that are running our government, senators, representatives, people in the defense industry, Pentagon, a lot of these people have a big stake in a lot of these pharmaceutical companies. They're actually loaded up with stock. So, I mean, you got to ask the question: is there a motive behind it other than the welfare of every living child in America, or is there some financial stigma attached to it because they know they're going to make a lot of money? So,
well, this is somewhat off topic, but I'm going to bring it back. So just have faith in what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
When I think about vaccinations and what they could be doing to us, I'm kind of taken back to my studies on one of the theories of how the human species came to exist. The theory where the Anunnaki genetically altered primates with their own DNA through varied iterations ultimately wound up with the current version of us that we know today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one ideal
Theory, yeah.
And the reason I'm taken back to these studies is the way that theory closes with the Anunnaki is that there are Anunnaki still living among us, right? And they took positions of power during the Great Deluge and have maintained those positions of power as an effort to continue their oversight on the species that reproductively got out of their control.
Yeah.
These vaccinations, to a skeptic, look like population control, mind control, et cetera, which aligns with the theory of the Anunnaki, which, if you believe that, are the ones ordering us to continue to be scientifically altered via these vaccinations.
I mean,
put thought into it, well, who could be behind this? Well, the powers that be, which currently are.
I mean, they've talked about eugenics since probably way before the 1920s, but it really came into fruition back in the early 1900s and late 1800s as a idea of how to create this the best of society by sterilizing certain ethnic groups and the mentally incompetent and older people, and you see through Planned Parenthood and some of these courses of action that they've tried different circumstances, and the old idea hasn't died. They've just gotten better at selling it to us. So, I mean, I'm sure there's still a upper echelon of society that have most of the power that would like to see this population control in a more manageable population. And I mean, you don't have to go out and slaughter 1 million people when you have absolute control through monetary fund.
Well, do you think that vaccinations are any behind the scenes, some sort of population control?
Anything's possible. I mean, Bill Gates came out, I don't think it was a TED Talk, but he was doing a talk to an audience, and I don't know if he messed up or he misspoke, but he was basically saying if we do a better job through vaccinations and something else, we can get our population down to so-and-so. And he's one of the frontier researchers and funding entities of vaccination research. And was it a slip-up? One of the richest people in the world talking about controlling a population through vaccination.
Using your power to your advantage. So.
Well, I mean, if you looked at it collectively, if you looked at all the vaccinations and what they're there to help prevent, could we have an outbreak of measles, mumps, chicken pox? I mean, and are they all extremely fatal? No. They had an uproar about measles in New York and some of the upper states just a couple of years ago, and so it was a big giant panic. They said certain neighborhoods in New York were refusing to get their measles for their kids, and as a consequence, there was this massive outbreak of measles, and a bunch of kids
makes you wonder
died.
if they used them as a kind of a control group and said, hey, these assholes don't want to vaccinate kids, so let's go ahead and bring some measles over there and sprinkle it on some desks.
Well, I mean, psychologically, if you inundate on the daily news this horror and tragic population of people that refuse to go along with the masses and demonize them in a fashion that everybody hates them, and if you don't hate them because of what they're not doing, then you're an asshole like they are. I mean, it's psychology 101. You take something out of context and you demonize it so that the entire group goes against it. Just what you want. I mean, that's what you want if you want to get your point across. Whether there was a big threat or not, they use that to push everybody to get more vaccinations.
Now, I had the ingredients. One of the issues I guess, that I've come across in people who are against vaccinations, if you want to call them anti-vaxxers, whatever. I don't like to lump everybody into one group. I think of anti-vaxxers as kind of the Black Lives Matter of the vaccination people. You know, they are just hardcore for one thing.
Like the flat earthers.
Yeah. Whereas they're just people who are just kind of against vaccinations that aren't out here with signs, and they're not making YouTube videos, you know? So
they just want to be able to make their own decisions for their own family.
And one of the primary complaints is the ingredients, some of the ingredients that are found in them. Now, I kind of did a little bit of research, and it's going to sound like I'm reading here off a page. And guess what? Guess why? Because I am. Because I'm too stupid to retain all this in my little brain. The basic ingredients are an antigen, which is the active ingredients. It's the part of the vaccine to which an immune response is generated. Usually these components are whole parts of or products made by the virus or bacteria. So that's like the core element, okay? That's the main like the virus or bacteria that they have to introduce in order to get your immune system to build up an immunity to it.
Yeah.
And then you have your adjuvants, which are substances added to the vaccine that allow them to work better by enhancing the immune response to the vaccine, decreasing the quantity of the vaccine needed to gain protective immunity, or lowering the number of doses required. Then you have stabilizers. They're used to protect the integrity of the active ingredients during manufacturing, storage, or transport. Commonly used stabilizer is a gelatin. And then there are preservatives. Some use it to prevent bacterial or fungal contamination. And this is kind of where thimerosal came in.
Yeah.
Which was a bad one.
Yeah.
That was a big time bad one. Now,
is that the mercury component?
That's the mercury. Now, let me just go ahead and say, people think mercury, they think of a thermometer, or that when you pop your front off your old thermostat, if you still have one of those old mechanical thermostats with the little lever with the little ball in it of silver stuff, that's mercury.
Yeah, that's what we used to play with when we were 5 or 6 years old, because it was fun.
And but it's poison.
Yeah, it's extremely
toxic.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I have this. And again, it's going to sound like I'm reading off a page because I'm not intelligent enough to retain this information in my head.
Yeah.
All mercury isn't the same. Methyl mercury versus ethyl mercury. That's the argument here.
Yeah.
Mercury is a natural occurring element found in the crust's air, soil, and water. Since the Earth's formation, volcanic eruptions, weathering of rocks, and burning of coal have caused mercury to be released into the environment. Once released, certain types of bacteria in the environment can change mercury into methyl mercury. Methyl mercury makes its way through the food chain in fish, animals, and humans. At high levels, it can be toxic to people. Thimerosal contains a different form of mercury called ethyl mercury. Studies comparing ethyl mercury and methyl mercury suggest that they are processed differently in the human body. Ethyl mercury is broken down and excreted much more rapidly than methyl mercury. Therefore, ethyl mercury, the type of mercury in an influenza vaccine, is much less likely than methyl mercury, the type in the environment, to accumulate in the body and cause harm. Thimerosal was removed from vaccines after an amendment to the Food and Drug Administration Modernization Act was signed into law on November 21st, 1997. Now, thimerosal is a mercury-containing preservative. They claim it's no longer used in any childhood vaccine, with the exception of some vials of the influenza vaccine. Of course, their large controlled studies didn't show any evidence of harm to children. But when I go over here to I did some
cross-referencing.
Yeah, there's just no evidence of harm.
Yeah.
For I think they said it was 0.1 micrograms.
Well,
that's nothing, dude.
For me, I think part of the argument is the minute amount of these agents to create these vaccines. They argue in no way can build up enough to hurt the human body. And if you actually look at the human brain and the human body at 2 months old, at 1 month old, at the ages that these toxins are going into the body, they're extremely damaging neurologically to the brain. They say that some of these toxins inhibit natural substances which allow your immunity system to work better. And you got to look at some of the studies that are out there, some of the mainstream scientific studies. Let's just say that you were a worldwide painter. You owned a multi-corporation.
Sure.
You did paint everywhere.
I'm bad. I'm nationwide. Go ahead.
Your biggest supplier was Glidden Paint. And
Sure.
let's say that a small group of scientists determined that Glidden Paint, whatever ingredients they had in it, there was
Lead.
a component that was slightly dangerous to the public.
Lead.
Lead, yeah. Now, as the biggest contractor in the country of painting and using their product, you've been pretty happy so far, and you've been making a lot of money with them. So if you were to go out against them, guess what's going to happen to your business? You're not going to be the leader of the food chain anymore in your painting business. So effectively what the pharmaceutical companies are able to do is they come up with their own studies and internal research on proving something. And if they have to do 2,000 tests to get a couple of
The results
positive
that they want, of course.
Well, they only need to get a couple of positive results to be able to prove that it works, whether they've done 2,000 or 5,000 studies. So there's a margin of error in the first place. But
Well, do you have an argument regarding mercury as kind of a that would oppose mine, the ethyl mercury, which is
I can't dispute what you've discovered through your research because, supposedly science doesn't lie. But if you look at who's, again, funding the scientific studies, even if it's an independent association of medical doctors, scientists, usually it's funded by the pharmaceutical company that's actually producing the vaccine. So, of course, they're going to have a more favorable conclusion to that study and somehow be able to manipulate it. And it's just like the same thing of going on Google and researching anything that may be controversial. You may have to go past 250 results of the first 250 to be able to determine is there an opposing view, because you're going to get ABC, CBS, CNN, the Scientific Academy.
they're all going off of the same page anyway.
Well, yeah, they all fall in lockstep. But as a scientist, let's say you made a discovery that was critical of mainstream ideas.
You're going to be shunned.
Well, you may publish your work and it may get a little bit of ground play, but if that's the opposing view of this gargantuan monopoly of money involved, you're going to be quietened up pretty quick and threatened. If you don't discontinue your pursuit to get this information out, guess what? You're not going to have a career anymore. You're going to be discredited. We're basically going to crush your career.
Yeah.
So, that's a big incentive for somebody that's been working for 30 years to build his career and in a pretty good, comfortable place, not to go against the big boys. And that's what they do,
This came from my Australian friend, Man Brain Dave.
Man Brain Dave.
He said, well, what do you think science is? There's nothing magical about science. It is simply a systematic way for carefully and thoroughly observing nature and using consistent logic to evaluate results. Which part of that exactly do you disagree with? Do you disagree with being thorough, using careful observation, being systematic, or using consistent logic? Breaking all that down, what he said. And that's where I think what he was trying to get to with that was the benefits of vaccinations outweigh the risks. I mean, yes, there are kids that have outbreaks and rashes, nerve damage. Some would say autism. That's an entire different topic we'll go into here soon on this episode. If it's 5 kids out of 1,000, is it worth it?
Yeah.
The way I told it to him was this. You give a bowl of rice to 10 people, everybody eats the rice, and everything's fine. You give that same bowl of rice to 1 million people, some people are going to have reactions.
Yeah.
Gluten, whatever, wheat allergies, whatever, that kind of stuff. So is that not the case here? Well, everybody's physiology is a little bit different. Everybody's chemical makeup is different, and we're all going to react to different things. Some people smell the smoke off of the Marlboro, and they instantly get nauseous and sick.
Yeah.
Some people chain smoke them. So that's just difference in physiology or chemical makeup. So does that not apply here?
Well, with regard to science, I agree. It's a logical conclusion based upon evidence, statistics, and research. there's control research, placebo, but a lot of science is based upon theory, and it's not proven. Let's just say gravity, for instance. Gravity, everybody knows gravity. Gravity's a real thing. Well, gravity is a theory still in science.
Right.
And they've yet to be able to understand the mechanisms behind gravity and what is the driving force behind it. There's plenty of theories. You know, you say, but Garland, I thought gravity was a real thing. That's what I was taught in school. Well, it is. It's the most logical theory about how things work. And so if you look at science and what it can tell us, it can give us conclusions based upon observations, but it's not the definitive absolute, because nature, you know, the human body is the most remarkable thing in the world. They've yet to be able to mimic the sophistication of the human brain, much less the body's own ability to heal itself. So I wouldn't want to say that all humanity is exactly the same, because you got environmental effects from different regions of the world, and those all come into play of how you're, say if you go to Mexico, they say don't drink the water. Well, the water's not bad. The water just has particular bacteria that Mexican people have adjusted their bodies to, and so they don't have any issues. But we go there with our filtration systems.
It's going to make us sick. Yeah, we're not exposed to it. It's all about exposure. If you raise a child vegetarian, vegan diet, and then they get 20 years old and they're in college and they go have a hot dog, they're going to be sick.
Yeah.
Due to exposure to all those things that are in hot dogs that they've never had introduced to their body before.
Yeah. So, I mean, can you give a one-size-fits-all vaccine to an entire population around the world?
It's impossible.
It's impossible. And we've already seen from year after year that the flu vaccine that they give annually, and they promote it like hell. I mean, it's constantly in the news and fear-mongering, go get your flu shot. A lot of times it gives the people the flu, and a lot of times it actually is a different strain that comes out that year. So they've done all this effort and research to get the right one out, and it's less effective. Now, it does help people. I mean, I wouldn't suggest that people don't go out and get the flu shot, because there's a lot of people that have weaker immune systems that are older and they need certain protections. And if you've already been getting it and you haven't had any adverse effects, but see, as older people, our bodies are more adapt to our liver and pancreas and kidneys are able to filter out certain toxins. But
endocrine system,
you know, as a younger 2-month-old, you're putting these neurotoxins into the body, and it goes straight to the brain. And I mean, there's so many cases. Even Robert De Niro, he did a movie called Vaxxed, and
he came out, I think, when his son was 18, that his son has autism.
Yeah, there's just so many cases like that of taking the, say, MMR. Now, if they took the MMR, research showed 3 years after what is recommended by the CDC. I think you said 1 year, maybe 3 years old.
I think England does it much later than we do.
So they've done studies showing that at an older age, their body is a little bit more adapt to handle that. That right there, if you got a population of kids that are supposedly getting autism, and I know you said we're going to touch on that topic later, but
sure,
there's a direct connection with that. And if you look at some of the graphs of the rise of autism, I mean, they said 1 in 50 kids are getting autism now. And then you look at the rise of vaccinations. I mean, you got to make some correlation.
Well, I wanted to kind of run through some of the ingredients that I looked up. I gave you the types of ingredients, like the class of ingredients that are in these vaccinations, but it didn't give you, the certain ones that are on the oh my God list, why they're in there. I tried to kind of look that up. Of course, I was trying to find the negative aspect of it, and the internet being what it is, not to say that it was slated towards the good guys.
Yeah.
But my information was very limited to the positives.
Yeah.
So that's what I have here. I'm not saying that this is all fact. This is just what I pulled up off of the internet. Now, aborted fetal cells, I don't really have an answer for that one.
I don't either.
Okay. So the mercury, thimerosal, was in there to prevent contamination of the vaccine. Allegedly not in there anymore, thanks to I think in 97 they gave it 2 years, so it was done by the year 2000. There shouldn't have been any more thimerosal. I'm sure there were some bottles floating around that they're like, I don't care about no expiration date. Let's just use this up. We already got it in the fridge.
Yeah.
E. coli.
Yeah.
Why would you put that? I mean, you hear about Why do you think you didn't get a lettuce on your Wendy's burger last year? You know, when you were going through the drive-thru, man, I want that Wendy's burger. Oh,
Yeah.
no lettuce, thanks to E. coli. It's a transport capsule designed to help next-generation vaccines do a more efficient and effective job than today's immunization. So it's some type of a carrier, like it helps move it around the bloodstream, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a doctor to break that down, but aluminum is in there to help boost the body's response to the vaccine.
Okay. Another toxin, heavy metal toxin.
Heavy metal.
Heavy metal.
Yeah, I'm a slayer. Polysorbate 20 and polysorbate 80. Now let's go ahead and get the differences in the numbers out of the way. The higher the number, the higher the ethylene oxide. 20 equals 20 parts, 80 equals 80 parts, okay? These alter the surface tension and usually helps dissolve oil in water. So these are used to help everything blend together. These are known to cause developmental and reproductive toxicity in animal studies. The concern is even greater for young children. Now, that information was not in regards to vaccines. I tried to find information in regards to vaccines, but this is more of using it in makeup and things like that you put on your face or skin creams or whatever.
Fetal tissue.
Yeah. Then you have EDTA. I was interested in what the hell EDTA stood for, and then I saw the word, and I was like, I am not going to write down 87 characters and then try to enunciate them. Forget it.
Yeah.
I do good with the 4-letter words. Anything over that is, just random luck.
Mind-boggling.
But when you look up EDTA on WebMD, there are lists of horrible illnesses that can be caused by this. It's an actual medication all of its own. Look up EDTA and then look up whatever vaccine. As with any of these ingredients that we're talking about, if what I say alarms you, please do your own diligence. Get online, look up the ingredient, try to dig up what you can on it to find out what it does, what it can do, or if it's just kind of an inert thing. Spermicide. I didn't really need to look that one up because I already know what that is, and why would that be in a vaccine? So interesting. Formaldehyde. That's one people be like, what? Formaldehyde? Whoa. Well, did you know that your body actually produces formaldehyde all on its own?
No.
It does. It's to kill viruses or inactive toxins during the manufacturing process. Formaldehyde is diluted during the vaccine manufacturing process, but residual quantities of formaldehyde may be found in some current vaccines. The amount of formaldehyde present in some vaccines is so small compared to the concentration that occurs naturally in the body that it doesn't pose a safety concern. MSG, we all know what MSG is. It's delicious. Monosodium glutamate.
Yeah, makes
It's
you
in
bald.
some of my favorite seasonings. Hello. Why do you think I wear a hat, my friend? So I don't blind you. Barium. That's what you do with a dead chemist.
Barium.
You bury him. Glutaraldehyde. It's sold as a disinfectant, medication, and a preservative. Doesn't sound like I want it injected into my body, but maybe to give you a buzz. I don't know. Latex rubber. If you've ever eaten bread off of the grocery store shelves, you've probably already eaten latex rubber. Whether or not you want to inject it into your infant, that's up to you. Like I said, do your diligence. Find out, okay, my kid's going in for this vaccine, that vaccine. Try to find out what the hell's in it. If you have to call the doctor and ask what the brand is, whatever name is that they're going to use on your kid, and hope that they tell you. There's one called beta propiolactone. Now, this is from EPA.gov.
Yeah.
Acute, which is short term, inhalation exposure, beta propiolactone causes severe irritation of the eyes, nose, throat, and respiratory tract in humans. Contact with the eyes may cause permanent corneal opacification. Burns of the mouth and stomach may occur in humans following acute exposure via ingestion. What do you think it does when they inject it into your veins and nervous system and veins? I mean, what do you think it causes immediate?
There's something that all of those ingredients combined together probably are capable of doing that if you were to take ordinary medicines aren't capable of doing. And there's something called the blood membrane barrier. And what that basically is on a molecular level, the medications can't get into the bloodstream unless it's directly injected into it. And in addition to that, into the brain membrane cells. So some of those ingredients may be added to actually get past that barrier, which, normal pharmaceutical drugs usually don't, that you take by mouth.
Right.
That's why a lot of supplements that people take vitamins and multivitamins. They're not quite as effective as actual real food, such as broccoli and celery and all the good stuff you need, because those foods naturally get past those barriers
Right.
that are on a molecular level that these supplements can only get 10% of what needs to be.
The rest gets pissed out of your body.
Scientifically, I couldn't tell you what half of those things do. With regard to the response of people and the number of children that have been injured because of taking the vaccines, whether that's direct result, most of them report an immediate response within days of taking a vaccine shot, that their child is injured. And ironically, the U.S. government, I don't know what year they did it, but they basically said that consumers cannot file a lawsuit against any company that manufactures a vaccine.
Right.
And there's a special court set up for the vaccine arguments. And they said that 85% of the cases are thrown out or overruled. So why would they need a special legislation to dictate that you can't sue a vaccine company if there's not something going on that they don't want to be sued for? Like I said, Robert De Niro came out with a movie documentary a few years ago. I think he introduced it either at Tribeca or was actually going to premiere it at that world event. And
Right.
in the last moment, like the day before, I guess he got pressured not to release it.
Right.
And he's a pretty powerful guy in Hollywood. Why would they knock him down if he spent 2 or 3 years producing this documentary?
Because he doesn't own enough stock.
I guess so.
I kind of want to go into the autism side of this. This is what I gathered, okay? Autism has a genetic basis. Researchers found that when one identical twin had autism, the chance that the other twin has autism is about 90%.
Yeah.
For fraternal twins, the chance was less than 10%. That kind of goes into the case of, well, I took my 2-year-old in to get a vaccine and they had a reaction. It could be a rash, whatever.
Yeah.
When my newborn baby that's in my belly right now is born, I'm not taking that child for any vaccines because my other child had a bad reaction.
Yeah.
This case kind of says here, that researchers found that one identical twin had it. The chance the other one had it was 90%. Those are two people with the exact same chemical makeup. So one that's 3 years old and one that's about to be born are going to have a little bit different makeup.
Yeah.
Although autism has a genetic basis, environmental factors also cause the condition. For example, mothers who took thalidomide, which is used for nausea during pregnancy, had birth defects including malformed ears and shortened limbs. They also had a significantly greater incidence of autism than babies born to mothers who never took thalidomide. The end result was that they actually found that thalidomide clearly caused autism, but only if taken in early stages of pregnancy, like the first trimester. If it was taken in the second and the third, the risk of your child having autism went down, the further along you were in the pregnancy. So women in the U.S. also occasionally received mercury when they were pregnant. It happened when doctors found that the mother's blood type was not compatible with their baby's blood type. To prevent this mismatch from causing damage to the baby, mothers were given a RhoGAM shot. Now that's spelled capital R-H-O, capital G, capital A, capital M. So the mothers were given a RhoGAM shot that used to contain thimerosal as a preservative. In studies, babies exposed to thimerosal and RhoGAM didn't have a graver risk for autism than babies whose mothers didn't get the RhoGAM. Thalidomide and rubella virus can cause autism in pregnancy. Evidence is clear that mercury does not. One study from Japan looked at the MMR vaccine, which was withdrawn from the country due to concerns about aseptic meningitis. In that study, a statistically significant number of children were found to have developed autism even though they had not received the MMR vaccine. So that kind of rolls out MMR too. Now, they don't say what age that these vaccines were administered. Another study published in the February 2014 issue of the journal Autism found the rates of autism spectrum disorder diagnosis did not differ between immunized and non-immunized younger subgroups. Could that just be giving the masses what they want, trying to prove the anti-vaxxers wrong? I don't know.
They can come out with study after study, and that's what you'll be able to find on the first few 25, 30 results as favorable results in favor of the pharmaceutical companies and the government. And if you really dig a little bit deeper, you'll find that there's thousands of parents across the country and across the world, for that matter, that have experienced an extremely negative effect immediately after their children having vaccinations. And you can't discount that. I don't know what percentage that is, but if you have scientists and doctors coming out against the vaccination pharmaceutical companies and stating what they find and what they see on a daily basis, I mean, those are just layman people that have no skin in the game. They don't have any stock in pharmaceutical companies. They don't have their careers on the line. They just see the suffering of these parents with their children that are developing these immune deficiencies, autism, neurological disorders, stomach disorders, and you can't discredit that there's a direct correlation between, specifically because of timing, the time that they take this vaccine and the immediate after effects. So, and if you got medical professionals standing side by side with parents, you got to look at it credible, regardless of what continuous scientific studies they produce, because again, a lot of these research studies are funded by the very companies that are producing these vaccines, and that's where you run into, it's like the fox guarding the hen house. Just look at in the government, pharmaceutical companies that have gained positions in the federal government. Back, let's say, in Ford, the VP of Government Relations and Pfizer, Catherine Burnett, she became the National Security Counsel for Ford. Look at CEO Billy Tallman of Pharma. He became a U.S. Representative Democrat. Global Registry Policy from Merck, Reed Faisheiser. He became Assistant Secretary of Commerce Department. Basically, this giant lobbyist group of pharmaceutical companies, and I'm not saying specifically vaccine companies, but there's only a couple of rivals to the pharmaceutical industry with regard to lobbying, and one is information, Google, Facebook, currently, and the other is the banking and insurance industry.
Right.
So those are the three trifecta of corporations that have the biggest power and influence over our U.S. government. So of course, they're going to squash whatever opposition. I mean, if there's a few thousand women out there that are crying foul because their child was inadvertently caused autism through this particular vaccine, they're going to silence them. They're going to suppress the information. They're going to pay for the studies to prove them wrong, and they're not going to have a voice. They've already convinced the government to come up with this Quasimodo court system to vindicate the victims of any kind of vaccine issues. So if they have that power, then of course you're not going to get anything on. They're going to demonize it just like they do anything that they don't want out there in the mainstream public. So
I have a listener who I would like to call and bring into this conversation, if that's okay. She, from what I know, she has a child who had a reaction immediately following a vaccine, I think like while in the doctor's office. So I'd like to bring her in. She probably had to get with her any kids and shit.
Third time's the charm.
I'm going to have a little fun.
Hello.
You're in a mall?
Yes.
You're doing a podcast from a mall. Welcome to the Boomer Bob Show, the wacky, zany Boomer Bob and Garland in the Morning Show.
Good morning.
See, he's here
Hi.
with us. Talking about vaccines, and we've kind of gone over varied conspiracy theories and some of the ingredients. Then we talked about the autism aspect and that it was linked more to the thalidomide and not necessarily, I'm sorry, it was... was it thalidomide or trimerizole?
They call it isolated autism and not autism.
If you'd like to state your name, just your first name would be fine, so people know who I'm talking to.
Athena.
Okay, Athena, thank you. Glad you answered. Third time was a charm.
Hi, Athena.
That's okay. I
I was running.
I understand. I am grateful for you taking the time to join us on this conversation. I understand that you have a reason to kind of be in the anti-vax camp. So would you mind sharing with us what the reasoning is?
Okay. I have 3 children. My son being 19, an 8-year-old daughter, and now a 1-year-old daughter turning 2 very soon. My son being 19, his vaccination record is very short. He has had a total of 3 mandatory vaccinations when he started school. and he's 19.
Yeah.
So all this time goes by, and I now have my daughter, Gabrielle, and I'm just so weary with giving her, so many vaccinations. So I did delay. I didn't let them, vaccinate her as a baby. And then as she was getting older, they were, oh, you got to do this. You're behind on this. She needs all these shots. And I said, I really want to do one at a time. So if anything goes wrong, and, they were just very aggressive and very pushy. And back then I didn't know that I lived in a state where I had the right to choose. We only have 16 states, that you have the right to choose. And Pennsylvania is one of them. So she was, I believe she was 2 or 3, and she went in for her MMR, her second series. And her, she said her legs were hurting. And I said, oh, honey. And, doctors were like, she's overreacting. She's a girl. And I'm thinking, no, this is not her first time getting vaccinations. And she was very dramatic. And when we went home, she cried all night that her legs were hurting. Now, all these years later, she's 8 years old, and she's constantly having leg problems, constantly. And they tell me, well, this could have been worse. She might not be able to walk at all, but I should be grateful. And I'm not grateful because my daughter does suffer constantly, but they try to ensure me that she could have lost her ability to walk altogether.
Now, the vaccine was administered in the arm, correct?
Yes.
And it somehow affected the leg. That's interesting. That it's
immediately
yeah.
affected her legs. She said she couldn't walk and her leg was burning, in her calf area.
That must have been pretty scary for you, not knowing what to do and how to fix it.
Well, plus, I mean, when this was done, all this information about anti-vaxxers was out there. There's a lot of skepticism available, but you went ahead and you did it anyway, trying to do what's right for your child.
I thought I had to for daycare.
Right.
And it wasn't until her Tdap where I said, I am done. Because then she went and got, I believe, again, a second series. She went and got her Tdap, and her arm, she said, Mom, my arm's burning. She was just screaming. And once again, doctor said, oh, she's a girl, overreacting. I said, I don't know. Before I can even leave, she was falling kind of limp on me. And I had to carry her out, and she was just screaming, and they said she was overreacting. So, of course, I just want to take her to eat, make her feel better. Mama just vaccinated her. So we go out to eat, and she laid in my lap the whole entire time and never sat up. So we get home, and it just got worse. She ran 101 to 105 fever for 2 weeks straight. She never ate. Her arm swelled up more than 2 times in size.
Now, Athena, have you reached out or told your story to anybody else in the community or any of your friends and family? Is there any group of people that agree with you and can sympathize and have similar stories with you?
Yeah, well, when it first happened, the doctors wouldn't recognize it as a vaccination injury. So I was kind of alone there. But I did find a doctor who said, he sees this more and more. It's becoming more common. It's getting more progressive, more and more cases. So then he, had me reach out to some other parents online. And then I reached out to my mom, and then, she gave me links to Parents Against Vaccinations, and come to find out, it is just so common. And then not only was I finding it through the internet, but come to find out my own family, and my husband's family were suffering with their kids from the same exact thing, from the same exact vaccination.
And that was Tdap, right?
Yeah.
Now that's for tetanus and I think whooping cough, also known as pertussis.
Yeah.
It's a modified version. The first edition was in the 1940s, and then they revamped it, I think, in the 80s, maybe 90s. And then in 2005, they actually changed the age range when it was to be administered. And they said something about they used to order it administered every time you got pregnant. And then they said
they still do that.
Well, now they're saying that you only really need to do it once every 10 years.
Yes. Because they tried giving it to me while I was pregnant with my third child, Elizabeth, and I denied it. And even after saying, no, thank you, that I was against it because I have a child not once but twice injured from vaccination, they said that could have no effect on my new child. They even tried to convince me that shooting something into my bloodstream would have no effect on a baby who solely survives on what I put in my body.
Well, I mean,
and even after I said no, they brought the shot in anyways.
I mean, you saw that with your younger brother regarding the program shot that made him have the issues he has today, cerebral palsy. So,
what recourse of action do you have? I mean, at this point, I know the anger that you experience and the range of emotions with everybody saying, well, that's normal, that, she's overreacting, she's a female.
It's a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, hearing that, it's got to be very disheartening for a parent to not have any course of action to take against what was done to you and your child. Have you found any course of action to take? Is there any avenue?
No, not only can I not find anyone to medically or legally be on my side, but not only they won't allow me to make my choice that, look, I almost lost my daughter. She was very ill for 2 weeks. I literally almost lost her, and nobody cares. And not only do they not understand or feel anything for me, when I was pregnant with Elizabeth, I didn't want to do the vitamin K shot or the hepatitis shot because she was just coming out into the world. Within minutes, they wanted to give her stuff. And I said, let her breathe. I said, no. And I denied all of it. And when I was pregnant, my one nurse said that I would not be leaving the hospital with my baby. And I said, I will leave the hospital with my baby. And sure enough, my very first day home, Family and Services showed up at my house.
Wow. It's like the state taking control over their lives before you even get a chance to put them in your arms and take them home. And how do they have that power to make that decision against, you're the natural mother, you know what's best for your child. So
what I don't understand is I live in PA, and in Pennsylvania, we're one of the 16 states where we have the right to choose for any reason not to vaccinate. So I don't understand. Like, I currently have 3 children. I pay health insurance, and I have no pediatricians because I do not vaccinate the kids. So the pediatricians turned me away because they said that, especially Elizabeth being almost 2 with no boosters of vaccination, she is an endangerment to the other patients in the waiting room, which I oddly try to explain to them, are those patients also not waiting to be vaccinated? Ain't they also not vaccinated when they come in?
Right.
Would they all not be equal when we first walk in? And they said it's not the same thing, but it is. I pay $1,100 a month and can't even go to a doctor.
I mean, you've got a 19-year-old son who hasn't seen all these vaccinations either. He's seen some vaccinations, but not this degree. And
72.
he seems fine. You know what I mean? Like, he's not banging around here going, Mom, I don't feel good.
Yeah,
So,
he's overall been a very healthy child. And Elizabeth, who's now 2, I don't have her crying in my arms periodically throughout different nights that she's having leg pain. Why am I not suffering the same with my other kids that I do now with my 8-year-old, that I was pushed to do things I didn't want to do in the beginning?
are you taking kind of alternative measures and trying to, I guess, provide your children with the right foods and, non-smoking environment, et cetera, so that they can have a good, healthy immune system?
Yes, we do eat clean and green. I buy my meat from a butcher, not from the stores.
Right.
I do buy organically as much as possible. We do supplements of vitamins, like anything that's healthy and
natural
for your body. I'm willing to do it, but I'm not going to take something made in a lab that, I understand, it's for the greater cause. 1 million children can get it, but even back when, say, measles and mumps were at its worst, 400 to 500 children died a year. And that's extremely sad to think that. But we're still in the hundreds that they're dying from the vaccination. So where did we really improve anything?
Yeah, because it seems like the vaccines are causing more damage to kids than the body count is. Like the number of damaged kids is higher than the body count. And now we have kids that are permanently damaged. There's no reversal. They don't grow out of whatever the hell's wrong with them. And these pharmaceutical companies have all the laws and all the courts on their side. So parents like you just have to shut up and deal with it.
You kind of do. And also, they pay out. What do they say? The company Merck alone has paid out $4.2 billion to injuries, but how not everyone's being settled out, because I can't even report both my cases. So I'm one person with 2 cases that have not been reported. I'm probably just one of thousands of parents out there who have not been able to speak out or be acknowledged because the pediatricians just pull you aside and said, oh, it's not because of that.
Yeah. And you got to look at the companies that produce the vaccines. If they're making profits upwards of anywhere between $5 to $30 billion a year, and you're looking at a broad range of payouts of maybe $4 billion in settlements over a broad range, that's peanuts compared to the bottom line of what they're making. So they can write that in their books just like Walmart does for theft, 10% every year for retail. So.
I mean, the other aspect of that is when you go to the doctor, you have to sign all this crap that, I don't know about you, but I don't sit and read every line word for word. And
I don't.
So you sign away, you don't know if you just signed away your right to take a legal course of action in the event of a malpractice or otherwise, things like this. And the fact that you're having to take off of work, take your kid to the damn doctor, sit there in a waiting room and deal with the fact that your appointment was at 2:30, here it is 3:15. You're in the freaking lobby and your kid's bugging you and wanting your phone, and you're like, no, I'm using my phone right now. And you just sign the damn paperwork and give it back to the woman at the front desk, and you don't even pay attention to the fact that you just signed away your rights.
Yeah. You look at the recalls for like small toys for toddlers, and there's a choking hazard, and maybe 2 to 3 choking incidents happen where there was a death of a child, and now it's an industry standard. They've regulated it so that they pull everything off the market, and it's no longer a danger.
Right.
Look at the staggering amount of children that have been injured through vaccines and vaccinations.
But they're not pulling those off the market, are they? No, because the profits are too big.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot at stake there.
Yeah.
And so your little voice, and unfortunately your daughter crying and having her medical issues.
That's a you problem.
Is of no concern. And
it is. It kind of is a me problem.
You just did what you thought was best for your child, and as recommended by.
Well, I didn't think it was best. I didn't think it was normal to have so many so fast, so young. But I was pushed because I had to take her to daycare.
You thought you were
legally doing the right thing.
You had to comply in order to, something came up, you had to go to work. You couldn't be a mom anymore. And, and taking care of the kids at home, you had to go to work. So your kids got to go to daycare, preschool, whatever. You just automatically assume that they require this kind of shit. And they don't tell you that when you go into the doctor's office. Hey, you don't have to do this by law. They don't divulge that information when they should.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I know the schools need it because of so many of the children. It's a percentage. The schools do get a bonus because people say, "Oh, that's just a myth." No, the schools do not get bonuses. Well, my husband owns a demolition company. We have torn down elementary schools, and we do have the developers there on hand. And the one school was so big that they weren't able to run it. Like they had to shut a whole section down because the budget was huge to build it. But to run it, the budget monthly wasn't enough. And I said, well, why was there such a big budget? Because 97% of the children were vaccinated, and they got one of the largest budgets.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I know my doctor, she is super cool, and that's why I go to her. She doesn't mind it when I say, look, I got that condition, and I looked it up on Google. Most doctors are like, oh, great, Dr. freaking Google, this asshole, right? Yeah. But I'll do that, and my doctor's like, well, okay, well, that's good that you cared enough to look into it, and I'm glad you're here. We can get you taken care of. And but one of the things that they don't tell you, or that you don't think about, is that a lot of these colleges where these doctors go to med school, they are bought and paid for by big pharma and the food industry, et cetera, et cetera. They are told what to tell their patients. They're told the old food pyramid. That's what you go by. Yeah. Sorry,
but flawed.
But we're not supposed to really consume that much bread and wheat, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, dairy. All that's wrong. The whole cholesterol, fatty foods thing was a guy back in the 1950s. Nobody had ever done a study on this. And he did a study on it, feeding rabbits meat. And he said when the rabbits ate vegetables, they didn't develop a heart condition. But when they ate meats and fatty foods, they developed a heart condition. Well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
I don't think a rabbit's supposed to eat like that.
Rabbits aren't supposed to eat meat. They're herbivores.
Yeah.
But guess what? His research was heralded as groundbreaking. He's the first one to ever do it, and it's still carried through today that fats are bad for you, et cetera, et cetera. And you have an entire medical industry, for all of its advancements, is flawed because big pharma tells them, here's what you need to prescribe. We will pay you for each prescription. And then you have big food saying, here, tell them to eat like this, because that's who pays for their education. These colleges that they go to are paid for by big pharma and big food. What that does is that persuades the curriculum in their favor. In theory, they are educated by big food and big pharma, and they are taught wrong. I know everybody's, oh, well, you're just a stupid house painter. What do you know about being a doctor? Well, you know what? I may paint homes for a living, but I'm not a dumbass, a complete dumbass. I'm a dumbass, but I'm not a complete dumbass. And I may be capable to think for myself and do my own investigating, because you know what? I don't 100% trust the system.
Yeah. Athena, something you said that has just been bouncing around in my head, it's of great importance, is the statement that the doctor made that your daughter, it could have been worse. And just the premise of that as a parent hearing, well, because of what you did, now my child is going to be suffering. And you're going to stand here and tell me that it could have been worse. It's like the lawyer who says, well, you know, we tried and I couldn't get a innocent plea. You're going to go to jail for the next 40 years, whether you're guilty or not, and you still owe me $80,000. I mean, is it not absurd to you? And I can't imagine the range of emotion you felt. And you can't overshadow the emotion of the people that are experiencing this. And no matter what type of scientific study you present or statistics or whether it's good, when you hear parents talk about what they have to go through as a family, and some of these children are for the rest of their lives, and it changes the entire family's lives. I mean, forever.
Yeah, it does. I would have to agree with that, because it does change. I mean, Elizabeth or Gabrielle's life will never be like David and Elizabeth. When she goes to bed, we never know. Like, I'll just hear her screaming and crying in the bedroom, and I know she's having a bad night. But I mean, we're prepared. We know she has these problems now. So she has her, you know, her heated blankets. She has them in the living room. She has one in her room. You know, we have the ones for the freezer, because if it's real bad, sometimes we can ice it down to where she's just in a light cry.
For the listener, I know this child has spent extended amounts of time in my home. This is a very well-behaved, very intelligent, almost creepily intelligent child.
Is that the one that I saw driving the backhoe or the bulldozer?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is her.
This kid has ran a machine bigger than a house that is used to tear down buildings. So, and done it flawlessly, better than I could. So this is not some little baby brat kid screaming in their bed. This child has a legitimate problem caused by the vaccine
that I never wanted to get in the first place. 100% never wanted to get it.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of squash anybody out there listening. Oh, well, maybe your kid was just an asshole, you know.
Maybe it's genetics.
Yeah, maybe you were an asshole.
The doctors do say that she could be overreacting. She could be looking for attention. Why, when everybody's sleeping in the middle of the night, would she decide, you know what? I think I want my mom, when she can simply just walk into my room if she wanted me. I mean, she's welcome into my room anytime. Anytime she wants to sleep in there, you know, she's welcome. She doesn't need to get my attention that way. And why would she want to scream all night? Like, but the doctors, they do say, you know, she could be having cramps. Give her a banana. We do give her bananas. It doesn't do anything. She's not having growing pains.
Athena, I'm pretty sure you're not some activist or somebody in Washington that is screaming these emotions out about your own experience. What would you say to parents out there in regard to what vaccines have to offer and what their doctors advise? And would you have any advice for them? Obviously, because
that's where I am twisted there, because I do have a child injured, and I do have one child who barely has any. I'm barely vaccinated. My husband's not vaccinated. He doesn't get sick. But I still think it's a choice. I think if you feel more comfortable and more safe to vaccinate your child, then do so. But you got to do your research and know that there are consequences. Anything you put in your body, there's a consequence, whether it's good or bad. I mean, you have to know that. But I mean, I can't say don't get vaccinated, because if you're comfortable, then go, you know, get vaccinated. Do it for you and your children. Do it for your peace of mind. But don't do it because they're bullying you. Do not do it because they're telling you you're an unfit parent. And don't do it because they're going to threaten to take your kids away. Do it because you want to do it, and not because you're being forced to do it.
That's a great answer.
Because I was forced.
I guarantee that any vaccine that I got as a child, as a 49-year-old man, has gone, if not through just a lifespan like expiration, but because of I did LSD when I was 19. I'm not an alcoholic, but I have drank my fair share of alcohol and had a lot of fun in my life, and smoked a little weed when I was younger, and whatever benefit that the vaccines had is probably worn off by now, and I'm just cruising around on, I guess, good karma. I don't know.
Good karma.
So yes, but I'm not out here getting measles, mumps. I don't even know what the hell rubella is. It sounds like something you serve with fried chicken. I don't know.
Well, I've been doing a lot of research with that, with the CDC and, the reports.
Those
And it
liars,
seems
yeah.
like the chances of you even at its peak catching it didn't seem like, because like the numbers wise, the amount of people that were in the U.S. and the amount of people who were catching it, you have a better chance of dying and catching the flu than you have of catching the measles, the mumps, rubella, whooping cough. in that peak before vaccination. So to me, it just don't make no sense because nobody talks about the flu. Nobody. It's a part of our life. Oh, it's flu season. Oh, 40 million of us, if we're going to get it, 30,000 of us will die this year, but it's okay. It's the flu. And we just ignore it and shove it under the carpet, and we're not forced to vaccinate for that.
That's the other argument. When they do the influenza vaccine, it's based on last year's strain. From what I've seen on the news every year, this year's strain is different than last year's strain. So, well, why even get inoculated?
They do say there's 29 strands with 3 different series, A, B, and C. And they do say it could, in one season, mutate up to 2-3 times. But it's only supposed to mutate every, 3 or 4 times a decade. But they have noticed a change in 2016, 17, and 18.
My take on the whole flu shot thing is, number one, I don't like how it's pushed so much. The media is like, hey, time to get your flu shot. They got reporters out in the field, out in front of doctor's office, time to get your flu shot. When you walk into Publix, big old sign, $25 gift card if you get your flu shot. Administered by whom? Is the bag boy going to be hitting me up with the old needle there? What's up? My theory is this. The flu generally is fatal to whom? The very young and the very old, right? So
or anyone with a weak immune system or
right, okay.
respiratory problems.
So I'm kind of in the middle, other than the fact that I smoke. I'm kind of in the middle there. So I had the flu back in January when we got back from Florida, and I think I'd rather deal with a week of shit than to deal with the potential of having a bad reaction to a vaccine.
That kind of makes me wonder too, the explosion of immunity disorders that have occurred in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Is that in relation to this push to get the flu vaccine?
I'm seeing it more of the correlation of two things coming together. We are becoming more and more of a melting pot. You have people, global travelers. My nephew went to Colorado last week from here for 2 weeks to do work. And God knows who he came in contact with while he was there and then came back here. So, it doesn't take long for a germ to go around the world. You have that aspect of it, and then you have your food supply that has just absolutely gone to shit. You have industrialization of the food supply has just wrecked us. So the pig that they can't use, and they throw them back in the slop for the pigs to eat.
Yeah.
That's not how. No, that is not natural, and it's poisoning us. Our FDA and our USDA is not doing their diligence in regards to what we're paying them to do. Some lobbyists went to Washington, greased some palms, and there you go. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
If you got enough money, you can make anything legal. Let this be a lesson to anybody out there. If you have kids, please do your diligence. Talk to your doctors before allowing them to stick something in you. Don't talk to them while you're in their office, because that's too late. They're going to stick them with something anyway. They're just going to lie to you.
Yeah, even when you say no, they will come out with it anyway.
Make some phone calls. Are there not pamphlets? Aren't they not required to put out pamphlets in the lobby?
They do not. And even when you ask for the box inserts, which shows all the warnings, and side effects that could happen that the company, Mark, or whoever makes it, releases,
you don't get to see it.
I would say 9 out of 10 times they will not show it to me.
Yeah. But all of that has to be out on the lovely interwebs. So,
well, the first results people look at is WebMD and some of the major websites.
Look for the actual.
You have to go to the actual company. You have to go under the company's box inserts, or go to the government.
Yeah, look for the actual PDF file that you can download and print yourself, whatever. Well, thank you, Athena. This has been very informative. I hate that our beloved Gabrielle is going through what she's going through. I wish it weren't so. And I do wish that you had a recourse there.
Well, Athena, I just want to personally say I appreciate you putting a voice to the concern of vaccines and the drowning of money that's thrown at silencing people with a voice that experience this on a daily basis. And you're not unheard. And there's thousands of people out there that have experienced the same thing as you. And when you start looking at the overall objective of these companies and the money involved, you lose sight of the voice of the emotion that is involved with who's affected. And that's really what it's all about, the human experience. And if it's just one person experiencing it, that's too much. So I want to thank you for putting a voice to it.
No problem. I'm just happy I got to talk about it because no one ever wants to talk about it. But I see a growing problem. Like it's not good when you're suffering from a problem. You have a friend who is suffering from a problem. You know, your family members are suffering from similar problems, but we don't connect all the pieces that we know too many people personally that are suffering. And then it's hard to talk to people because they say, oh, my kids are fine. I just do what my doctor says. Well, just because your kid's fine doesn't mean that all kids are fine and that mine's fine.
Thank you again for joining us on this, and your information is invaluable. This will go out to tens of people.
Well, thank you for having me, and it was nice talking with you guys.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you too, Athena. Goodbye.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So yeah, I mean, what do you think of that shit? I mean, that's bringing in somebody who's directly affected by this, and I trust me, I was there during this whole thing. I was kind of like, these anti-vaxxers are just a bunch of, they got too much time, go to Dollar General, get some poster board and a marker, that kind of shit. And when I saw it happen to somebody close to me, it was just like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should be a little more skeptical on this. So I guess the only thing I can advise is when it comes to your kids, I mean, you should be doing this anyway, but let's just be kind of a warning shot fired. Feed them foods that are good for them and give their immune systems a nice fighting chance. And that doesn't mean going and buying Airborne and giving that to them once a day. Good foods, healthy environment. Don't smoke around them. If you've got pets, be clean. Vacuum daily, that kind of stuff. Give them a fighting chance.
If you're concerned about what kind of inoculations, vaccinations you're going to be experiencing with your children, I mean, do your research and don't click on the first 2 results you find from Google because they're obviously skewed towards a positive light. I mean, you got massive amounts of money, billions and billions of dollars in the pharmaceutical industry. They can dictate, regulate, and manipulate all the information to shine a light on them. So you really got to dig and do your due diligence.
Yeah, you can. I think an alternative. I think a lot of them go to Google, but DuckDuckGo is a good one, and I want to say StartPage is another one that doesn't always reference Google's database. So you may find different information or information more accurate.
Yeah.
Hey, Boomer Bob here. I thought I'd kind of add this to the end of this episode. If you made it this far, first of all, thank you. We do appreciate your interest. We are, just a couple of guys who like talking about stuff. We know people that we like to bring in and help add to the conversation, share their experiences with you, and maybe help you to decide what might be best for you. Maybe open your eyes to something that you didn't know was there. We got to a point where we were just repeating ourselves and kind of getting off topic, but getting into the conspiracy aspect of it. My takeaway during the editing of this episode is that we are all different. All of our chemical makeup are different. Yes, we have vast similarities, but you take a brand new vehicle, any vehicle you want, and you have 10 people test drive it. 5 of those people are going to think the thing sucks. 2 of them are going to love it. The other 3 are, they're kind of in the middle. And that's kind of how vaccinations, I think, work. Everybody has the potential to have a reaction. We just don't know. They need to come up with some kind of a litmus test. Here, lick this swatch. And if it turns purple, well, you're probably going to be allergic to this vaccine. They need to figure that out. Rather than damaging people, humans, as children for the rest of their lives, making their parents deal with going through the heartache and pain of raising a damaged child, making that child have to go out here in the world and function and be another worker bee or a drone and pay taxes. They need to figure it out. Just like they figured out there's a peanut allergy, or you have an allergy to naproxen, or you have an allergy to gluten, or we need to find out before we inoculate people, before we inject chemicals into people. we need to figure out whether or not they are allergic or going to have a negative reaction. There needs to be some way to test this. Figure it out. With that 4.2 billion that Merck paid out, put aside for lawsuits, you would think they could come up with a way to, here, lick this lollipop. If it turns orange, then you probably shouldn't take this particular vaccine. But we have another one that might work for you. That's just my take. Thank you for listening. Please check the descriptions for all applicable links. Catch you next week, y'all.
Ain't no lie, getting old as a bitch. Gonna spit this game, only way I'll get rich.